Bonjour à tous. On va commencer ce bel événement. On est ravis de vous accueillir, cher Vincenzo, ta délégation, cher David, chers tous. Ravis de vous accueillir à cet événement inaugural de ce partenariat stratégique entre Onepoint et l'Ethique Business School autour du Metalab. Alors, pour les étudiants qui nous écoutent, vous devez être tout à fait nombreux. Une table ronde sera suivie de cette introduction, de ces introductions, et cela en anglais. Vous dire quelques mots quand même sur Onepoint. Onepoint est l'architecte des grandes transformations, cabinet conseil et plus encore, qui a cette ambition d'accompagner ses clients, ses partenaires, ses étudiants dans un accompagnement en effet de bout en bout, couvrant tous les spectres, toutes les thématiques des grandes transformations, des grandes mutations que notre société vit dans son aspect bien évidemment digital et numérique, mais aussi culturel et humaine. Chez Onepoint, l'humain est au cœur du réacteur et la dimension humaine est majeure et nous accordons à cela une place prédominante aussi dans la responsabilité sociale, sociétale, technologique que nous y apportons et il faudra que vous veniez nous rencontrer parce que nous avons à cœur et à raison d'accompagner les étudiants mais aussi de les recruter. Nous recrutons les talents, vous faites partie des talents d'aujourd'hui et de demain, vous êtes les garants de la croissance et comme je dis toujours, l'excellence attire l'excellence et nous avons à cœur donc de vous inviter chez Onepoint et vous verrez, Onepoint, d'abord son siège social, 4000 m². L'année prochaine, nous aurons le grand bonheur d'investir 4000 m² supplémentaires dans un campus de 8000 m² dédié à l'intelligence collective, l'intelligence collaborative, où chaque collaborateur est finalement acteur, engagé, participatif de sa propre aventure professionnelle, mais aussi et surtout de cette aventure collective de la belle maison Onepoint. 2500 belles âmes chez Onepoint, implantés dans le monde entier, mais on se revendique champion et leader français parce que nous sommes d'abord positionnés à Paris, notre siège social, mais aussi dans des régions stratégiques comme Toulouse, Nantes, Lyon et Bordeaux. Et nous ouvrons aussi le spectre d'autres régions. Nous couvrons, je vous le disais, tous les spectres de ces grandes mutations autour, évidemment, de la data et de l'intelligence artificielle. Nous en parlerons. De la cybersécurité, de l'organisation, de la stratégie, de l'opérationnel, du design, de l'innovation, aussi de la recherche et du développement. Nous avons à cœur chez Onepoint de cranter des sujets de recherche et de développement, considérant que les sujets de recherche et de développement sont les garants d'une société qui vont vers le haut. C'est quelques mots pour vous dire, pour finir, que le Metalab, je regarde Aline, je regarde Guillaume, et là, Julien n'est pas des nôtres, il est souffrant, mais il nous regarde, je le sais. Eh bien, on a été, avec l'impulsion de Vincenzo et de David, eh bien, cette impulsion depuis l'année dernière, nous avons eu beaucoup d'enthousiasme à mener à bien, ce partenariat stratégique, le pilier Metalab, qui œuvre pour une société inclusive, durable, résiliente autour de l'éthique et de l'intelligence artificielle pour que société, individus et entreprises, mais également étudiants, puissent maîtriser, conscientiser et surtout manier l'intelligence artificielle et la data, et on en discutera largement. Voilà, mon dernier mot sera pour les étudiants. Vous êtes, je le disais tout à l'heure, les garants de notre société, de notre devenir. Encore une fois, les portes vous sont ouvertes chez Onepoint. Vous verrez, vous allez vous sentir chez nous, chez vous. Ne l'oubliez jamais. Et on sera toujours là pour vous accueillir avec beaucoup de bonheur et de bienveillance. Et je passe la parole à mon ami Vincenzo, puis ensuite à David Layani. Merci à tous.
Bravo. C'est toujours magnifique, Muriel. Toujours enthousiaste, engagé, passionné. C'est un plaisir. J'aime bien, je suis sûr que David partage, donc j'aime bien démarrer par cela. Donc, bonjour à toutes et à tous. J'ai beaucoup de choses à vous partager. Et donc, voilà, j'ai pris des notes parce que voilà, le moment est solennel et c'est important de bien démarrer ce partenaire qui est stratégique, tant pour nous que pour vous. Mais je dirais, maintenant, c'est plus nous et vous, c'est nous, tous ensemble. C'est ça qui est très bien. Donc, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Et merci d'être présents ou connectés pour toutes celles et ceux qui sont connectés à cet événement. Mais ça fait tellement de bien, on se disait ça tout à l'heure avec David, qu'enfin on commence à se croiser vraiment asseoir pas seulement en 2D, mais en 3D, et c'est très bien. Et voilà, vous savez, nous sommes là ce soir pour officialiser ce partenariat stratégique entre l'ESSEC et cette belle entreprise, mais le mot entreprise est réducteur, qui est Onepoint. Donc, merci beaucoup à vous, cher David, cher Muriel, de nous recevoir ce soir dans un cadre qui est inspirant. Je l'avais visité juste avant le début de cette trop longue période morose, et j'étais moi-même inspiré, donc ça fait plaisir ce soir de pouvoir être dans ce lieu de vie qui porte à merveille son nom, j'ose dire, dans un moment tant attendu justement de reprise progressive de nos interactions sociales. Il y a moins d'un an, à l'ESSEC, le Metalab voyait le jour, sous la direction académique des professeurs que j'aime bien remercier. Et ce soir, Guillaume Chevillon, qui est avec nous en présentiel, Julien Malorand, qui ne peut pas être avec nous en présentiel, mais sûrement avec nous à distance. Et à présent, cette équipe académique était rejointe par Benoît Bergeret, qui en a pris la direction exécutive du Metalab. Donc, toute l'équipe du Metalab est représentée ce soir. Qu'est-ce que c'est le Metalab? Le Metalab est un laboratoire interdisciplinaire, transdisciplinaire, multidisciplinaire, donc qui est novateur à plus d'un titre dans sa composition, dans sa finalité et dans son positionnement. Alors, dans sa composition, tout d'abord, en réunissant plus de 20 professeurs, ça c'est une caractéristique unique de l'ESSEC, professeurs et chercheurs issus d'horizons complémentaires, sciences économiques, sciences humaines, sociales, mathématiques, sciences de données. Ça c'est la composition, assez unique, sûrement unique en France et très rare en Europe. Dans sa finalité, c'est aussi un laboratoire novateur. Il s'agit de comprendre et d'éclairer les transformations culturelles, sociales, économiques engendrées par l'intelligence artificielle, en prenant la hauteur de vue nécessaire, et d'où le terme grec méta, en tête de ce lab. Et en plus, c'est extrêmement lié à l'âme de l'ESSEC. On a une nouvelle signature depuis quelques mois à l'ESSEC, c'est Enlighten, Lead and Change. Si vous souhaitez le traduire en français, c'est éclairer, impulser, transformer. Et donc, vous voyez, ce mot éclairer, qui est vraiment proche d'une institution académique de l'âme de l'ESSEC, ça fait partie aussi d'un élément structurant du Metalab. Et qui est aussi novateur dans son positionnement, parce que ce laboratoire produira de la connaissance et de l'innovation en coordonnant recherche académique et appliquée. Le Metalab s'est ainsi fixé 4 champs de recherche: l'intelligence artificielle au service du développement des entreprises, les futures formes de travail liées à cette technologie, le future of work, l'impact culturel de l'intelligence artificielle, et enfin, les questions de gouvernance, d'éthique et de régulation de l'IA, que Muriel rappelait tout à l'heure. Et c'est sous ce dernier point que porte justement, de manière plus spécifique, le partenariat stratégique que nous avons conclu entre Onepoint et l'ESSEC. Et je tiens à ce propos vraiment à saluer pas seulement l'engagement, mais aussi la vision manifestée par David, président fondateur, mais aussi par Muriel, et aussi par toute l'équipe de Onepoint. Et la table ronde qui va suivre illustre ce que nous pouvons réaliser tous ensemble. Je dirais même pas seulement ce que nous pouvons, mais ce que nous devons réaliser. Ce n'est pas seulement un souhait, c'est un vrai engagement que nous prenons ce soir. Faire converger nos connaissances, nos métiers et nos visions du monde pour façonner et promouvoir une juste utilisation de l'intelligence artificielle. Par ce terme de juste utilisation, j'entends 2 notions qui, à mon avis, sont indissociables. À la fois maîtriser les nouveaux outils numériques, mais aussi la finalité de leurs usages. Des usages éclairés, qui impulsent des évolutions et qui soient vraiment au centre de la transformation. Autrement dit, si vous me permettez de paraphraser Rabelais, il nous faut agir en science et aussi avec conscience. Et ce, quel que soit notre rôle, que nous soyons ingénieurs, consultants ou managers dans une entreprise de transformation numérique telle que Onepoint, ou bien étudiants, alumni, professeurs ou chercheurs dans une école de management comme l'ESSEC. Car l'intelligence artificielle nous place potentiellement en défaut, il faut faire attention. Elle évolue en effet à une vitesse bien supérieure à notre capacité de façonner des scientifiques de la donnée comme des managers capables d'utiliser proprement l'intelligence artificielle et en appréhendant ses impacts économiques, sociaux, culturels et éthiques. Et vous voyez, souvent, on se dit dans le Metalab que l'obstacle à ces évolutions n'est pas vraiment le manque de data scientists, mais plutôt le manque de leaders qui sont formés à ces sujets. Notre partenariat doit contribuer à combler ce grand écart au travers de programmes pédagogiques et de recherche menés en commun. Et le lien fort entre la pédagogie et la recherche, la création de savoir, mais aussi la transmission des savoirs au bénéfice de nos étudiants est extrêmement clé. Et du coup, nous allons ainsi créer, je l'espère, je le souhaite, on s'y engage, une boîte claire et éclairée de l'intelligence artificielle qui soit opposée à sa possible image parfois de boîte noire, tant cette technologie est souvent perçue comme opaque dans ses modes opératoires comme dans ses répercussions. Mais quand cela est le cas, ce n'est pas la faute de la technologie, c'est l'être humain, c'est nous, l'humain, qui a des approches qui parfois ne nous conviennent pas. Et donc à nous, l'enjeu vraiment de pouvoir éclairer tout cela. Et donc c'est un enjeu qui est crucial, qui est complexe, mais nous sommes tous extrêmement engagés pour cela. Et pour conclure, je citerai une des valeurs clés de votre entreprise. J'ai vu que nous avons beaucoup de valeurs en commun. C'est très bien parce que je crois que les partenariats de succès et de longue durée, souvent, on le voit bien aussi à l'ESSEC, commencent sur un projet concret, mais le succès est vraiment lié quand les valeurs des organisations des partenaires sont communes. Nous en avons beaucoup en commun. Il y en a un que nous n'avons pas en commun parce que nous ne l'avons pas mis dans la liste de nos valeurs, mais qui me plaît beaucoup, cher David, c'est celle de l'élégance. Et à propos de laquelle vous dites qu'elle consiste à produire du beau en même temps que de l'utile. Il me semble que ce partenariat est très prometteur pour tout cela. Donc, je vous remercie toutes et tous pour votre attention au nom de toute la communauté de l'ESSEC que j'ai l'honneur et le plaisir de représenter. Je souhaite vraiment que cette collaboration soit longue, fructueuse et aussi le début d'autres collaborations sur d'autres domaines de nos activités. Un grand merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, cher Vincenzo, pour ces mots si touchants. Ma chère Muriel, Monsieur le Professeur Guillaume Chevrillon, le Professeur Malauran, si j'ai bien compris, qui nous regarde à distance, à tous mes amis et collègues. Je suis honoré, je suis heureux et je suis fier. Je suis honoré pas seulement parce que je m'exprime après vous, Monsieur le Président, cher Vincenzo, ou après Muriel. Heureux pas seulement parce que je retrouve cet endroit qui a fait tellement de moments heureux et d'étapes passées chez Onepoint, ici avec les miens. Et je suis fier parce que l'ESSEC, pour moi, ça ne représente pas n'importe quoi. Ça représente la fierté de ma maman. Déjà, elle aurait peut-être préféré que je lui rapporte le diplôme, mais j'ai quand même passé une étape aujourd'hui dans la vie. Parce que cette école, parmi les 15 meilleures dans le monde, selon le Financial Times, avec 5000 étudiants, la moitié de professeurs étrangers, fait quand même la fierté de la France et offre beaucoup de capacités d'avenir. Et d'ailleurs, c'est tout le sens de ce partenariat. Vous avez rappelé, avec beaucoup de conviction, et je vous en remercie, les valeurs qui nous ressemblent. Et c'est pour ça qu'en toute logique, nous avons décidé de nous associer à cette chaire, à ce laboratoire de recherche et d'innovation, mais qui ne ressemble pas à tous les laboratoires de recherche et d'innovation, parce que nous avons la chance de pouvoir y contribuer naturellement par notre ADN et par nos savoir-faire. Mais aujourd'hui, ça répond à un principe chez nous. Je ne sais pas si vous connaissez la signature de Onepoint, Beyond the Obvious, c'est-à-dire aller au-delà de l'évidence. Et vous avez rappelé que dans Metalab, il y avait méta du grec ancien, et je veux croire qu'il n'y a pas de hasard, ça dit aussi au-delà. Et donc, on va au-delà de la recherche traditionnelle en rassemblant des chercheurs de très haut niveau, des professeurs très reconnus, des étudiants talentueux, et tout ça dans un écosystème ouvert, proche des entreprises, avec des startups, avec des PME, avec des grands groupes qui ne veulent pas se contenter de chercher, mais qui ont aussi envie de trouver. Et dans le monde dans lequel on vit, ça pourrait être utile dans les prochaines années sur des sujets aussi sensibles qui vont être abordés comme ceux d'aujourd'hui, notamment l'intelligence artificielle et l'éthique, qui est un sacré sujet. On n'a pas choisi le moindre des sujets pour démarrer et pour aborder ensemble ces nouveaux modèles de recherche, parce qu'on n'a pas simplement, encore une fois, envie de se contenter de réfléchir, mais on a envie, et vous l'avez dit, à juste titre, j'ai été très touché, d'éclairer. Et d'éclairer le monde dans lequel on vit et le monde de demain. Et il s'agit bien sûr de nos générations, mais de préparer le monde pour les générations futures. Et ça ne pourra se faire qu'à travers la transmission, la responsabilité et l'action. Vous êtes en train de former des grands entrepreneurs. On a beaucoup de gens de l'ESSEC chez nous, dans nos rangs. Et ce que j'aime bien, et c'est aussi ce qui nous rassemble, c'est que vous avez les pieds sur terre. Parce que j'en ai vu avec des galons sur les épaules, vivre à travers le statut, ce qu'on a déconstruit en grande partie chez Onepoint, oublier quelle cause il devait servir, et qu'une fois qu'on avait le diplôme, ce n'était pas fini, mais tout commençait. Et les entrepreneurs de demain et les grands dirigeants que vous êtes en train de former, ils doivent avoir les pieds sur terre et se rappeler que la portée du diplôme initial, elle va se réduire comme peau de chagrin. Et que si on ne renforce pas les liens entre l'entreprise et l'école, très vite, on va créer des surdiplômés dépressifs parce qu'au fil du temps, ils perdront de leur employabilité et du sens. Et on a vu que pendant cette période, la plus grande fracture, c'était une fracture de sens entre ceux qui se sentaient utiles et ceux qui se sentaient inutiles. Et comme on ne veut pas faire un monde fracturé en deux avec des dieux et des inutiles tels que décrits par Yuval Harari, on a tout à fait raison de plancher activement sur l'intelligence artificielle et l'éthique. Parce que bien sûr que l'intelligence artificielle va résoudre beaucoup de nos problèmes et nous apporter beaucoup de solutions en matière de cybersécurité pour se protéger, en matière de santé pour continuer à trouver des vaccins associés à la science, en matière d'industrie pour engager pleinement cette transition écologique et être capable d'avoir des industries flexibles et reconfigurables qui prennent en compte l'économie d'énergie. Pareil pour les villes dans lesquelles on travaille. Mais qui ici a envie que nous soyons gouvernés par des algorithmes dont on n'a absolument pas la maîtrise dans des boîtes noires, comme vous le disiez, ce qu'on appelle l'algocratie? En tout cas, pas moi. Et je n'ai pas envie de laisser ce monde à mes enfants entre des transhumanistes qui nous vendent des mirages et des déclinistes qui voudraient que tout s'arrête. Grâce à ce type d'action, on va pouvoir trouver notre réalité durable. Et notre réalité durable, ce n'est pas renoncer au progrès. C'est au contraire être devant. Parce que la plupart des déclinistes, ils racontent leurs histoires sur Facebook. Mais nous, ce que je voudrais, c'est qu'on arrive à faire des Facebook français et européens et que derrière, nous proposions des solutions de régulation, mais à nos propres innovations, pas à regarder celles des autres pour les réguler en demandant de tout arrêter et de se mettre en attente tout en continuant à utiliser ces outils. Bon, voilà un peu le sens de notre action et on a du pain sur la planche. Et tout ça ne pourra marcher que si on trouve des solutions. Et c'est bien l'idée du Metalab et de notre partenariat, c'est trouver ces solutions pour créer de la recherche, pour créer de l'innovation, pour créer des talents et pour créer aussi des actifs en commun qui pourront voir le jour demain et être capables de produire ces effets positifs parce qu'on créera des effets économiques tout en accompagnement les grands défis de notre monde. Alors longue vie au Metalab et je vous dis encore ma fierté de nous associer à l'ESSEC dans cette chaire.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Nous allons commencer maintenant merci à président et notre directeur. Et donc, maintenant, nous allons commencer la table ronde et nous allons la faire en anglais pour commencer pour inaugurer ce débat entre Onepoint et l'ESSEC. Nous avons le temps de nous organiser. Nous avons Alors, je me présente juste en une seconde, le temps que nous installions. Guillaume Chevillon, donc je suis professeur à l'ESSEC et co-directeur académique du Metalab de l'ESSEC. Malheureusement, Julien Malorand n'est pas disponible avec nous parce qu'il est souffrant, mais c'était important pour lui aussi. Ça aurait été important pour lui d'être ici parce qu'il a commencé sa carrière, il a travaillé chez Onepoint il y a bien longtemps et il est très proche de Onepoint, c'est quelque chose, voilà, il a été très heureux d'être là et malheureusement, j'espère que de toute façon, c'est le début d'un partenariat, donc les occasions sont très nombreuses et c'est juste pour avoir une pensée pour lui qui nous voit à distance. Je vais laisser la parole à Benoît maintenant, qui est le directeur exécutif du Metalab.
Merci Guillaume, pendant que tu t'installes. Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous, Benoît Bergeret. Je viens de rejoindre l'ESSEC et Guillaume et Julien, les professeurs Guillaume et Julien, en tant que directeur exécutif. Je suis très honoré de la confiance qui m'est faite par Vincenzo et toute son équipe. En deux mots, moi je suis quelqu'un qui est tombé dans l'IA quand il était petit. Je suis un praticien de l'IA depuis très longtemps, mais avec un focus tout au long de ma carrière sur les implémentations de l'IA. Et donc j'ai une expérience terrain de plusieurs décennies dans l'implémentation des diverses technologies successives et j'amène au Metalab cette compréhension intime des challenges posés par les technos d'IA dans leur mise en œuvre, ce qui est le sujet très direct de ce partenariat, parce que les problèmes d'éthique ne sont pas des problèmes inhérents à l'IA en tant que tel, on va en parler, mais des problèmes liés à l'usage qui est fait de l'IA, en particulier en entreprise.
And I'm going to switch now to English, and we're going to introduce the panel in 1 minute. And just before that, I'd like to point out that we're very proud at ESSEC to have women researchers. Unfortunately, all the representatives from ESSEC here on the table are male, but we will have one student who's online. And I wanted to say that the reason why our women researchers are not necessarily here today is because we have some of our top professors are actually women, and they're currently working on many aspects related to AI with respect to the smart city by Ivana Ljubic and Claudia Archetti, who work on the last mile delivery. We have people like Olga Klopp on Marikratz, who are working on massive data sets, on the scientific aspect of that. We have professors like Viviana Hay, who's working on how actually machine learning and artificial intelligence can help researchers build new theories and new models. So this is just a word of introduction, and I think this is what's important for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Guillaume. And so our panelists today, I will start with Asma Malla. Asma is an expert on political and economy issues related to digital platforms. She's a leader at Onepoint, where she developed Onepoint's ethics framework. She's also a lecturer at Sciences Po and an author, and she's a member of the scientific committee of the Laboratory for Public Ethics. Vincenzo, on the far right of the screen, is Dean and President of ESSEC Business School, and a professor of statistics, the president of several academic societies focusing on the links between statistics and the industry. Vincenzo has published over 80 papers on business analytics and statistics, so I think there's absolutely no doubt he belongs to that panel. And we have Gontran Pebet here on stage with us, partner at Onepoint, in charge of the data and AI practice at Onepoint, with a very rich career in consulting. He's a lecturer at Paris Dauphine and an expert in data analysis and architecture. And last but not least, not on stage, but he's with us on the screen behind me. Yes, he's here. Laurent Bibard, professor of philosophy and management at ESSEC. He holds the Edgar Morin Chair on Complexity, and he has done extensive work on morals and ethics, with a particular interest in technology.
And with him here, we have Valentina Jerusalmi, who's a current student of the Master in Data Sciences and Business Ethics that we have together with Central Supélec. And she will be monitoring all the questions online on YouTube. And so she might be interrupt anytime and, or at the end, depending on the urgency of the question that people will ask online. So don't hesitate to ask questions in the chat. That's quite important to us. And before we start the panel today, we decided all together to have a topic on biases and informational bubbles or filter bubbles. And just the reason why we mentioned that is because, of course, we know a lot about recommendation algorithms, but it goes way beyond recommendation algorithms, and it's the idea of, well, biases are what kind of mistakes that we make when we make recommendations, when we make predictions, kind of when we assess the wrong type of correlations. Filter bubbles or informational bubbles are the negative consequences of actually finding your own community online, or finding people that could be your soulmates, but maybe that you all go into the wrong direction and you start being kind of trapped into those communities. And so way beyond recommendation algorithms, we think that with our development, attention economy, all these issues related to prediction and prescription and, all the algorithmic-based analysis, we need to think about that from an ethical point of view.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Professor. In order to start the debate, I think it's probably worth setting the stage a little bit. And for that, I'm going to give the mic to Gontran. Gontran, could you explain what is AI and how does that work in 2 minutes?
Of course. Thank you for the question, Benoit. As you mentioned, there is kind of hype today with AI, but actually it's quite an old lady. It's something which is about 70 years now. So there has been many periods for AI. In a couple of words, if we could define AI, I would say that it's all about enhancing human brain for cognition capabilities. For instance, reading faster, understanding faster, reasoning faster, anticipating extra. I would say this is perhaps giving and providing human beings with something augmented. This is the first fact. The second fact is that what we observe today is that AI is becoming a kind of what is called by a World Trade Organization a GPT, a general purpose technology, just like a combustion engine or electricity. That means that AI is now really everywhere. It's like in everything we breathe or we use. When you use the apps on your smartphone, when you use GPS in your car, extra, you have AI. And the idea today is that AI is really empowered by data, and we produce as humans more and more data. And this is where all of this data produced by humans has to be treated in an ethical way. And this is the purpose of our panel today.
Thank you, Gontran. That's very enlightening, I think. Asma, you've been practicing AI. Based on your experience in the field, can you quickly brush the landscape of benefits, but also the risks associated with AI systems?
Thanks for the question. Almost everything has been said, actually, but the question is pretty interesting because AI systems or dual-use technologies. So, and indeed, in every invention, actually, we have benefits and costs. In terms of benefits, Gontran mentioned it. It's scalable, flexible. They can calculate very huge amounts of data, actually. And in very complex situations, they can help decision-making processes. So it can be very efficient. They can also help in repetitive jobs and time-consuming jobs. So we can then free up time to more high-value jobs and more creative jobs. I'm referring here to the creative class of Richard Florida. So it can be very useful to get higher economic value. In terms of invention and disruptive innovations, AI can empower cybersecurity. We talked about it before. Space technologies, we saw it with Tesla recently. Predict diseases at early stages, etc. So we have really very and large fields of applications. In front of that, we can have negative outcomes. you mentioned it, predictive algorithms are actually designed by humans. And when we say that they are designed by humans, actually codes can have cognitive biases. And when we have cognitive biases, we can have some reproduction of inequalities or discriminations. For example, in the US, we have many researchers there working on that, like Kate Crawford, for example. And then what we see here is in some very sensitive jobs like judges, soldiers, lawyers, when we develop the use of predictive policing or justice softwares, we must be really aware and careful when we use this. And the challenge here is not doing it, but doing it with attention to our free will, actually. AI systems must be complementary to human decision, but can't replace it. And this is maybe one of the guidelines in our frameworks, for example, the human decision in the making decision process, or the whole process.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I think this notion of free will and that you talk about, I think we should call our philosopher, Professor of Philosophy, Laurent Bibard, to react on this, this notion of responsibility. I mean, the pros and cons. I mean, who's in charge of that in the end?
Thank you, Guillaume. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me, by the way? The connection works?
Perfect.
Does it work?
Yeah, it's perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think the question is definitely crucial because, as has been said just now by Asma, and everybody shares the same sentiment, I'd like to insist on these. Technologies are absolutely not responsible for anything. As such, they do not have any sense of responsibility. Humans have. And the huge problem we are confronting today is that a massive amount of people believe that the machines are or are not ethical by themselves. And the problem is that believing this, having this representation, means that progressively people unconsciously lose progressively their humanity and our humanity, because they will lose this very demanding self-consciousness that we humans are responsible for what we do and not the machines. So I think I fully agree with all the people who already talked that we need to keep in mind very clearly where the responsibility is. When we embed, as Asma just mentioned, when we embed some elements in the machines only do what we prepared them to do. So when there are some technical problems which we can want to call ethical, these problems need to be traced back to the humans and not to the machines themselves. I propose to limit my point to this because we don't have that much time, but this is definitely crucial. And my observation is that many people are believing nowadays that the machine as such are problematic. The machines are not. The humans who conceive, who use, who operate the machines are, of course. This is the main point I think it's important to underscore.
Thank you, Laurent. Yeah, it's quite important. And if I may, in that case, add one thing we know when we teach courses that we don't want to be just high level and always like theoretical. So I don't know if like the panel or maybe Asma, do you have examples, like positive examples of, where actually, you have systems that can be fair and take care of stakeholders?
Yeah, in our offer, AI Ethics, we developed a very pragmatic framework with very strong and bold guidelines like security by design, privacy by design, explainability, of course, human final control on decisions, inclusion. We didn't talk about inclusion and representativity. So it's very strong in our values, in the way we build and we design technologies here. Concretely, I have a use case. We're developing within Onepoint an open source platform to help reducing the consumption, the energy consumption to prevent climate change and fight against global warming. So the AI for research, knowledge, very important and complex issues like climate change really can help. And for example, here we are developing this for cities to get better recommendations on domestic and public use of energy, for example. And we can do it thanks to the huge amount of collected data. And I just want to add last thing about, we talked about social costs or the risks. One of the risks here, and it's related, is the issue of privacy, because AI and the algorithms actually are educated thanks to a huge amount and calculation of a huge amount of data. And in many cases, they are personal. And our challenge is to find the right balance between profitability, responsibility, and sobriety. And the other balance we have to find is efficiency versus privacy. And regarding the personal data, they're in the example of our platform, carbon footprint platform, we need this personal data in terms of energy consumption. But what we have to design altogether is what is a very sensitive data and what is just a personal data with nothing really at stake. So it's we have lots of debates about that.
Thank you, Asma, and lots of work as well. One of the things that strike me when thinking about implementing AI, beyond all the questions you asked, is a lot of these systems are going to change the way we work. And I wanted to ask Vincenzo, because you're in charge of preparing about 10,000 people to the workforce every year. How do you see the impact of AI and data-led decision-making on what you're preparing, the future you're preparing for them?
Yeah, thank you. The question is extremely relevant for us on a daily basis, because as we say, we are actually facing a quite new challenge for higher education institution, which is preparing, educating students, but even participants of executive education programs for jobs that, I exaggerate a little bit, do not exist yet. So there is it's quite new for a school. So the more and more we need to balance between the knowledge, the technical skills, the scientific approach, but also the knowledge of the sectorial jobs and also the soft skills. So this is extremely important. But why that? Because actually, I believe, at least what we witness, is that both workers and employers are undergoing a sort of double disruption in terms of the future of work. The first disruption was already there before the sanitary crisis, which was really in terms of the work in itself, the work content, how the work is evolving, because a part of it can be automated. So the impact of artificial intelligence, the impact of smart machines, the impact of technologies more generally speaking, and the impact of data, which is not exactly the same. I'll come back to this in a minute. What is even more important, so this part has been accelerated, exacerbated during the sanitary crisis. But the second disruption that comes because of what we've been experiencing, testing, what we have learned, what we have succeeded, what we have failed in companies, organizations during the sanitary crisis, is related to the, beyond the work, is also the workplace and the workforce. Those two elements have always been there, but they are being strongly disrupted. It's the way we manage different talents, different social contracts, the way we manage nomadic working, and so forth, so on. So now it's a matter of the impact on the future of work is a matter of how we compose across the three different elements: work, workforce, and workplace. And now actually we are able to activate the engagement of the people. And if I have two very short, but I hope impactful messages, the first one is we focus, when we talk about AI, when we talk about data, we focus a lot on technology, investments on digital, and so forth, so on. It's part of it, and it's very relevant, but we've done a survey at ESSEC with many companies, and we see that 58% of them have been investing in digital, but only 46% of these 58, which means less than half of those who have been investing in digital, have been investing on upskilling and investing on human capital. And I think this is the issue. The issue is really we need to invest on human capital in terms of their skills, in terms of how they evolve. And this is extremely important. And so I go back to this human dimension that many of you have been mentioning. And the second message also related to the data part, which is not exactly the same as AI, because we believe, as a statistician, I believe too that data is extremely relevant. But if I can take one sentence of Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, he says very clearly, we start from data, and I think this is extremely important to have a focus on this sentence, but at the end of the day, the final call is gut, which means that the experience, the competencies, the human dimensions is there. So on one side, we need to invest on human capital. On the other side, it's very important that the human judgment, because many often when I read things, it seems like we are opposing human intelligence to artificial intelligence. I don't think this is the right question. The right question is the place of human judgment with respect to artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Vincenzo. Very interesting answer. When I listen to you, transformation of the workplace and so on, I can see that these problems you're mentioning are only going to be more acute in companies that really want to scale the implementation of AI. And I'd like to turn to Gontran for the next question. When we get from lab experiments with data and AI, when we get out of that data scientist office, what's at stake? What are the elements that need to be taken into account to successfully ramp up usage?
Thank you for the question. I think Vincenzo just mentioned, but also Laurent and Asma, it's not scaling AI is not just about building bigger pipes to bring data to algorithms. I think this is one part. This is perhaps the technological part of the problem and of scaling. Scaling AI is perhaps about a whole cultural change inside the company, perhaps outside the company also. At the nationwide, continent-wide, it's about a change of culture. But inside the company, let's come back inside the company and referring to the survey Vincenzo just mentioned, you see that there is going to be investments on the technology part, but also on the upskilling and the new skills to be hired by the company. And saying that, I want to point out that companies, if they want to take their share of this third or this fourth revolution we are speaking, industrial revolution we are speaking about, have to be positioned on different battlefields. The first battlefield is also gathering the best data scientists, the best algorithm, the best people, the best-in-class people, but understanding the whole change of the society. And this change deals about environment, about economy, about society itself. So that means that the role companies have to take is really a responsibility of all of those stakes, environmental stakes, cultural, societal stakes, etc. And in a way, we can say that you cannot scale AI itself. It's about scaling the whole society, I would like to mention. Coming back to this idea of general purpose technology and perhaps making a comparison between this industrial revolution and the second or third one, the one about electricity. You can see that electricity has in a way redesigned the way we live with, of course, the electric lines, but also the way that everything comes out with electricity today in this room, etc., etc. And as citizens, we know that you do not have to have a shower with your hairdryer. It's about that, the cultural change with AI. We have to build new capabilities, new skills to apprehend this new power of data and of AI, which are different, of course, but which come together nowadays, and to bring all of this change and to turning it into value, because at the end, if you have only the enhancement of algorithms, you do not get value, and the value comes with the whole value chain, which is renewed and enhanced.
Thank you. So yeah, so if I understand correctly, yeah, the main idea is about change and dynamics. So to be honest, I mean, this is dynamics is really my line of research. So I'm very happy about that. But it's true that to come back to when we talked about this this change and that's actually the link of the. I mean, the focus we started with was about informational bubbles, and the very notion of bubble is when you have a dynamic and you get stuck somewhere. So we have to be, I guess, we have to be careful about enabling change and moving forward, but in the right direction and making sure that we all were there. So I think if I'm going to turn to Laurent Bibard online, because I think it's also a lot of what you're working on is related to, well, what is the future about and what is it like. So can you tell us a bit more on this?
Yeah, there is a very important point here. Listening to all what was mentioned, I think it is crucial to make clear that humans are made of asking questions, raising the right problems, looking for justice. Many elements that machines do not know. The machines don't ask questions. They don't raise problems. They do not have any orientation problem. They just do, and they just do what we want them to do. And this has a very important consequence. Sooner or later, they are past and the maximum present oriented. They are not radically future oriented, because the future does not yet exist to a certain extent, particularly when it comes to uncertainty. And the future is only radically human. We shape the future with our dreams, with our questions, with our desires, our fears, our problems, our intentions. But the machines, what do they do? And particularly when it comes to algorithms, they work and they are impressive about calculating, but they do not think and ask questions. And in this point, I would like to question the worldwide use of the so-called artificial intelligence. I think we should talk of artificial computation, artificial calculation, which is of course impressive, but it's not intelligence as such. Intelligence is the way how we go forward towards the unknown. And the unknown, symbolically, by the way, the great philosopher Hannah Arendt traced it back to what? To children, but to human children, which would not be previewed but by any biology which would provoke eugenism. So we need to keep in mind that we humans are vulnerable, are weak, but on the same time, and for this reason, are everything which starts, the starter towards something which cannot be previewed. Last point, the problem of the bias alluded to by Asma is that the bias reproduces preconceptions, and the preconceptions come from the past, never from the future. The real future is open and unknown.
You want to? Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to add something because, of course, I totally agree with Laurent. So he summed up all the stakes perfectly. But what I want just to add, it's my personal conception of AI systems, is the goal when we design technologies like that is not to get a perfect system, but to get a fair system that we can fix and assess.
At one point, but many people dream of perfection.
And I think it's a mistake.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. This happens for the autonomous vehicle.
Yeah.
They are supposed to be perfect in advance.
Absolutely. And the thing is how to figure out how we can build trustworthy AI frameworks, but not perfect. And Laurent, and Laurent is absolutely right when he says that actually when we talk about predictive algorithms, actually they are based on past statistics, and we predict the future based on general assumption of the past. So it can be a bit tricky.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks indeed, and I think that the time is kind of a bit short, so unfortunately we're going to have to conclude soon. And I would like to conclude with maybe Vincenzo, because all we're talking about is about the question of whether things are determinate, like either deterministic pattern, like things come from the past and we just project into the future. When you use data and how much we can be creative, how much we can be innovative, and I think it's exactly what the CEO of Onepoint was David Layani was saying earlier. We don't want to be stuck into the past. We want to be creative. We want to open up. So at ESSEC, this is what I guess. Why is it important for us to use this? To work on that and not the artificial intelligence that Laurent was saying, but maybe it's augmented. Or what is your take on this?
Yeah, this is very much at the core of our mission, because since students, but even executive participants, they come to the school, but then they leave the school. They don't stay in the school for the rest of their life, so they need to be relevant to what they do in a company, organization, in a society. And more, I say that we don't train managers, but we train leaders. It's a whole of a difference between training a manager and training a leader. And more, it's leaders that needs to be adaptive. What does that mean? It means that more and more we need to set ourselves, both in the formats of our training programs, then in the content, into a cycle that is really lifelong learning education. The more and more people understand that even though we need to provide what I like to call future-proof education, it does not mean that it's an education that is worth for the rest of the life, but it's something that beyond the knowledge, beyond the technical aspects, we also need to provide what I like to say in French, savoir-faire and savoir-être, which means soft skills, even though the word is not something that I like a lot, but we will discuss another time. But it means a little bit of a diverse mindset, open mindset, capacity of adapt to unknown situations. My dear colleague and friend Laurent is a very nice example of an airplane landing on the Hudson River, where beyond all the knowledge that you can have, beyond all the procedures that you can know, beyond all the experience you might have acquired, you need the capacity of adapt to an unknown situation in a very short time. And this is something that you don't learn in books, but it's something that you can learn, and you can prepare yourselves in terms of mindset whenever. That's why I believe that there are many of these topics, for instance, artificial intelligence, but also the way we approach other challenges in the society, the other transition, environmental transition, the way we need to do innovation within companies and so forth, so on, that are not topics, to say it in one word, that need to be limited to specialists. The time of providing those elements only to specialists between companies and firms, it's over. We need leaders that are really open to diversity, which is diversity, all sorts of things, including hybridation of competences, meaning leaders that are not engineers, but they are open to understanding engineers. They are not artificial intelligence specialists, but they are open to understand that, and they have different degrees of technical knowledge, but also openness.
Thank you very much. So I think with these words, it's time to ask the youngest person here online rather than on stage, but the leader of tomorrow. I mean, one of the students from this program we have with Centrale Supélec, so an engineering partner. So Valentina, you have a lot on your shoulders, it seems now. The future is yours to build. So I don't know, what is your... Do you have any questions? Well, first, will you have questions online, but do you have a first reaction or some question that you may have to wish to ask yourself?
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you very much for this roundtable. It's really appreciated, and I think it's very important for us to discuss these topics. I have a few questions online. I don't know if it's better to start with them. I also have some questions of mine. I will maybe start up with this question that I asked by Jérôme on YouTube. He asks, how do we deal with responsibility using AI models based on weak signals to make the predictions? So those signals may not be fully understood by even the developers of the specialists of the field. So basically, I think he's asking, how do we recognize this kind of bias, and to whom do we give responsibility for these choices?
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess it's we're not going to go into the technical aspect of how to interpret mixed signal, but I think that the question is more about responsibility here and designing of algorithms. I don't know if maybe if Gontran, you would like to.
I can try it, and Asma perhaps has ideas on this issue. I think that the first thing, but we're quite aligned with Asma regarding that. The first thing is the purpose of this prediction. I guess predicting anything about health or predicting future sales is not exactly the same impact and moral impact or human impact or whatever. So the first thing is to realign perhaps the purpose and this weak signal. This is the first part of my answer. The second part is I think we've all agreed on the fact that this responsibility should ultimately be a human responsibility. So somebody has to take this responsibility. And if nobody wants to take it, then fine, let's do not use AI. I mean, we have the choice, and it's important that humans, keep having this choice.
Thank you. Yeah, it's. I think that the notion of uncertainty is quite important. I mean, actually, it's not always predicting something, but also know what you don't know and assessing how much you don't necessarily realize, and that could be the if you want to do something. I agree. I mean, fully with Gontran. I hope that Jérôme online somewhere also agrees with us, and that we've answered this question. But I think it's you're right. Either we.
Maybe if I may add something, is that. And it was a little bit mentioned, I think, by Asma and Vincenzo. One human bias, for instance, it's a bias, could be to be far more, how can I say, having far more exigence towards a machine, an algorithm, than we would have towards a human. We can understand that humans are... can fail, machines can fail too. I think we have to start living with that also.
Thanks. Yeah. Valentina, do you have maybe a follow-up question?
Yeah, I would like to touch on a point that was also touched earlier by Asma. We've seen, we know that, for example, also in the US regarding credit scoring systems, there are many biases regarding minorities, for example, Latin Americans, Hispanic, and actually the predictive models that are used to predict credit scoring, for example, are based on past history. So they have some kind of embedded bias in them for sure. And by fixing, let's say, or correcting for this bias, we are kind of in power of shaping a better society that makes more fair decisions towards minorities. Is this also a risk from some perspectives, in a sense that it all depends on who decides to shape this ideal society by correcting bias, and how could we also prevent someone to feel empowered to decide what society should be in general?
That's an excellent question, of course, philosophical, and I will answer under the control of Laurent. But well, there are two things I can put here just to answer. First, ideal society is very dangerous from that perspective. So we can build fair societies, trustworthy societies, ethical societies, but ideal, perfect, etc. is pretty, how I can say that, this topic. Second, regarding the automation and reproduction of inequalities and discrimination, we have now very huge academic research fields on and feedbacks and results, and they are very concerning in the US regarding their minorities. Sometimes it's on purpose for budget concerns, and sometimes it's just the way codes are designed. And what is at stake here is, when Vincenzo talked about hybridity and inclusion, is to be very careful on diversity in the data scientist population. We need to have data scientists that are boys, white, black, women, minorities from all the perspectives, just to get various views on the world, and not just to have one vision based on one certain spectrum of values. So it's pretty important to hire people that they come from these minorities.
Thank you. So given that you mentioned Laurent, maybe Laurent wants to add something.
Yes, maybe 2 points. I would like to come back to an Asma previous point about perfection. This is definitely dangerous indeed for 2 reasons. Since Plato in the famous Republic, we may know that shaping perfection may be very dangerous, and Plato himself makes clear in the very book, the same book, don't try to make it real. Just use the dream of perfection as a frame, but never try to make it real. And the problem nowadays is that people imagine they are fascinated by the so-called IA, and they imagine it may create perfection. But then comes the question, what for? And second, machines will never be perfect. I come back as well to one Gontran, I think, an Asma point. And as they will never be perfect, sooner or later, some elements they will integrate will make them collapse if humans are not there to maintain kind of flexibility. This is a very important Carl Weick argument. The so-called human vulnerability introduces flexibility in the technological systems. So as long as we are with the systems, we are the ones who prevent them to collapse most of the time. These are the 2 points I wanted to make, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Laurent. I would perhaps add a point which is something which is very, which is about responsibility. I guess finally, the purpose of men and women has been to shape the world for years, for centuries, for millenniums. Now we can shape the world with new tools, not only with teachers, not only with political parties, but also with machines, let's say with algorithms or with machines. And the impressive responsibility that we have here in this room, for instance, and you, the people who are listening to us and who will be dealing with AI, the impressive responsibility you have is to be responsible of shaping the world. And yesterday we were shaping the world with humans. We will be shaping the world with algorithms too. And we do not have to get away from this responsibility. And this is why Metalab has really itself a huge responsibility to skill all of those people in order that they can assume those responsibility and be in position to take the appropriate decisions.
Thank you, and I think it's, I mean, going back to what Valentina learned, what we try to teach in those courses, from the technical point of view, actually, something that we don't always realize, I fully agree, is that the success of machine learning techniques, a lot of that is about cross-validation, about that you minimize the cost, but you add a penalty to it because you don't want to over-optimize. You don't want to fit perfectly the data. You want to allow for mistakes because you know that it's by allowing for mistakes, this will be reproducible, this will be valid for some time in the future. So you don't want to explain too much. You want to be too perfect right now to allow for randomness in the future. So I think it's, and we forget about it when we try to extend to applications, and that's quite important. I think we're a bit late on time, but we have another 5 minutes, I think, for a couple of more questions, if that works. So Valentina, if you have any from the chat.
Yeah, I have a question that arrived to me personally. So to the business leaders on our panel, where do you draw the line between profitability and AI explainability? Reducing AI bias through adding diversity constraints can be less profitable, more expensive to implement, and often inaccurate. So
I think this is a question about the short run and the long run. You had this thing in finance. Financial engineering was a big thing in the 80s, and there's a short-term constraint, and then there's also the long-term. And if you have a big crisis, then suddenly what you thought was profitable at the beginning just ends up being completely wrong afterwards. But I guess that's my take of it. But I suppose other people have other opinions. So anybody wants to go?
Always very tricky questions. Profitability of business models are not the contrary of technological, resilient, sober, clean, responsible models. I mean, we can design and we can find the right balance between, as I said before, between profitable systems, efficient, and responsible. We can do it. We try to do it every day here within Onepoint with the AI offer and all the platforms we can develop. So we can do it. It's not that easy, but just to join what said Vincenzo, it's gonna be. I'm gonna struggle to pronounce it, but it's gonna be multidisciplinary. Teamwork, and just for Laurent as well, we absolutely need to answer also to the responsibility question. It's also a matter of reintroducing humanities, history, philosophy, sociology, etc. So it's very important just not to make mathematics, statistics, data science, and other people doing all the human sciences, but just to find the right as well balance, because the world we're going to shape and we are shaping, I'm just realizing it, is a matter of balance. It's not a matter of perfection. It's a matter of trying to find how we can evaluate benefits and costs, and especially social costs. But we can do it. And just to conclude, AI systems and technology models can also help us solve very complex problems, actually. Like, as I said, to prevent climate change or fight against global warming. So we don't. It's gonna be a mistake if we throw the technology just to say it's gonna be dangerous or very easily like that. But we just need to, as Gontran said, we need to not to get rid of it, but to work with it, with technology and AI systems in the future.
You wanted to?
Yeah, perhaps because this is really a tricky question about profitability. But when you mention profitability, I guess you're mentioning two. I am not an economist, but I would answer that way. You're mentioning money. So where does the money come from? And you're mentioning a time frame. So do you want to be profitable in the long or in the short run? So the first question, where does the money come from? To answer that, if we want that the money comes from human, I guess that helps drawing the line. That means that you want to preserve humanity in both meanings. I would say you want to preserve the place of human beings, and you want to preserve the humanity we've been building. And that helps drawing the line and saying that finally, because you were mentioning explainability, you have to find the proper balance so that algorithms are just enough explainable in order to be self-sustainable and acceptable, I would say. So I don't know if it's just enough or more than just enough, but it's about tuning, finding this fine-tune, and this is why it's not easy, definitely. But this is those are the, I would say, the main points I would use to try to draw this line.
That's such an inspiring question that maybe we can spend hours, but I think this goes back to the question that Laurent was saying, what for? I think that and maybe the what for and the multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach can be very helpful, trying not to oppose the short term to long term. What also, Guillaume, you were saying, in terms of maximizing something but putting a penalty, which is a very well-known statistical criterion, it can also maybe be helpful in the way we create value, which means we need to create value. When I say creating value, it can be economic value, it can be social value, it can be environmental value. And then it's a matter of some constraints, some penalties to put. I mix a little bit the more real wording with the statistical wording, and is more and more actually what our students ask, what the young generation asks, which is the request of purpose, or meaning, trying to understand what is the direction, or also why we go into that direction. And this is extremely important. So being open, when I was talking about hybridation of competencies, is not only competencies, but it's also mindset. The more we try to have a sort of a holistic view, well, it doesn't mean not being specialized, because nowadays we know that in many different disciplines we need to be very much specialized to understand what's going on, but we shouldn't lose the holistic view of understanding more globally what is the consequences of our actions. And this can help in order to try a little bit more responsible, and I would also say inclusive.
Thank you very much. So I think we're short on time. So I mean, it's very exciting, and it's the launch of a partnership. So I'm looking forward to all the discussions we're going to have. Exactly. So but we must put the end. You know, it's a beginning. Sorry, the end of the beginning soon. Maybe I'll ask Benoit to conclude just a few words about what we want to do next. And thanks a lot, Valentina and Laurent. And, thanks for the panel here. I think it's time for us to conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, dear panelists and Valentina, for very insightful responses. We've touched a lot of points. In conclusion, I'd like to bring one point to the audience. Ethics and human-centric AI have been vastly commented. As it happens, it's also the driving axis on the project for AI regulation in Europe. Why do I mention that? It's because European regulation of AI is taking a very interesting angle in that the proposal is focusing on regulating usages, not technology, and regulating based on the sense of responsibility, not strict laws. There's lots of importance given in non-forbidden systems, non-high-risk systems, in the EU proposal for AI regulation on codes of conducts, which is really interesting in that it's going to push the member states to incitate practitioners and users of AI to adhere to commonly agreed codes of conduct in which ethics is going to be key. Of course, there's going to be a healthy debate. There's already a debate that has started among us in this room on these topics. So we're looking forward to using that to bring a lot of value and rich conversation to the partnership. And of course, it remains to be seen if that regulation and the work we're going to do around it together is going to help shape the industry the same way GDPR has helped shape the privacy industry, which is still to be seen. So in conclusion, I'd say that it's clear that ethics in AI is certainly more than a nice to have, because the consequences are not always nice to get. And that few domains in our lives have such a strong requirement requiring ethics. Medicine is one domain I can think of, but I'm not sure there's a lot of others, right? And so that makes our partnership even more relevant, even more important in the years to come. And I'm really glad it's a 3-year, hopefully 6 years or more partnerships on the topic. Thank you all.